she had no opportunity to go to college. So instead, she went into the Air Force, and she spent a whole career in the Air Force. And when she retired from the Air Force through a program called Troops to Teachers, which was created by, I think, an 86-year-old Washington University history professor, Jack Hexter, who was watching soldiers come back from the first Gulf War. He saw all these sergeants who were having trouble getting reintegrated into society. He knew we had a teacher shortage in urban areas and rural areas, and he came up with this brilliant insight. Well, maybe somebody who's been doing okay in the middle of the desert with a bunch of unformed 18-year-olds would do okay in the middle of a classroom with some unformed 17-year-olds. And he convinced Senator Danforth. They created Troops to Teachers. People like Sandra Sessoms Penny have had a second chance at higher education. She's now completing her doctorate in education as an assistant principal in Northern Virginia. It just goes to show how, with the right kind of policies, this can be an opportunity not only for career transition, but for social mobility. And that program has done spectacularly well. They have, I think, 3 times the retention rate of traditional ed school graduates. An enormous number of African-American men are teaching through that program. So I think if we do more to help people navigate this transition period in terms of health benefits, in terms of support for going to school during that time, we can not only make it easier for the number of people to do it, but make it an opportunity for people to get a leg up and to do work that maybe they didn't have a shot at the first time around. But I don't see much in the way, other than great examples like Troops to Teachers or some of these Encore fellowship programs. I don't see a coherent human resource policy for the second half of life that looks particularly at the needs of people who are of more modest means and who are looking to move into work that can sustain them for another couple of decades.
I wonder if we're placing too much emphasis on the number 65, which has no basis in justification. And also we should consider not only considering a higher number, but the fact that it is different for different people, and particularly with different occupations and so forth. Difference between, say, an industrial worker who's done routine jobs and an executive who has done a wide variety of jobs have different horizons, even for the same physical conditions.
Absolutely. There's an economist at Stanford, John Chauvin, who has done some research that looks at, instead of looking at years from birth, looks at years from death. And if you start looking through that end of the telescope, first of all, the quote unquote aging of society is not nearly as dramatic as it seems. But it does really highlight that as we've added these years to life, we're not necessarily adding them at the end. We're adding them into life in ways that can be used. And in many, it opens a lot of radical questions. I mean, one of the great points of tension in the society is with young families who are trying to enter the labor market, move up, begin mortgages while raising kids. That's one of the most stressed areas. Maybe we should be allocating more resources at that juncture with the understanding that people will work well into their 70s. So there, it opens up a whole set of questions about the lifespan that take us away from arbitrary numbers like 65. And as I mentioned, that number was really almost picked out of a hat in the 19th century.
Yes. There's a debate raging on health care, and we know the significant component of the health care cost is related to older Americans. What are your thoughts on specifically some of the proposals that have been talked about, offered in the case of the public option, perhaps rejected? Do you, with the look that you have on the older demographic, what are your thoughts on that health care debate?
Yeah, well, just to focus on this transition issue, I think one of the main barriers that are keeping people from taking a leap, even though their current career work may have run its course, is that they can't imagine what it would be like to give up health insurance during this period. And there have been some proposals in Washington to double the COBRA period for people over 50 as they make these kinds of shifts. But again, you know, they've been piecemeal. There hasn't really been a comprehensive effort. And, you know, I think if people are able to remain engaged, if they get the health benefits they need and other kind of support for retooling, one of the benefits is going to be in their own health. The MacArthur Foundation a number of years ago did a 10-year study on successful aging, and one of the findings is that Freud was right, that the keys to health and mental well-being, physical well-being in later life could be boiled down to a large extent to the idea of love and work, strong social connections, and a reason to get up in the morning, a sense of purpose. And so I think if people get the health benefits that they need to move into a new chapter of engagement, that will in turn produce health benefits in their own lives.
Tell us what's going on in Cleveland now relative to Encore and what may have been going on over the last 10 years?
I think the Experience Corps and the RSVP program here, the Retired Senior Volunteer Program that houses Experience Corps, are both worth looking at. And I also think AARP has done a terrific job in launching a new website that's focused on contributing to the greater good, and that talks about opportunities around the country, including in Cleveland. We at Civic Ventures have a resource called Encore.org, ENCORE.org, which is a community of people. There are a number of members here in Cleveland, in northern Ohio, all around the country, who want to shift in this direction, who are turning to each other for ideas. And in fact, we're going to be doing a course this coming week with the New York Times Knowledge Network and Washington University in St. Louis. It's a 4-part course on making the transition to Encore careers. So anybody in any part of the country can join that, and we've got a bunch of experts lined up who are going to be able to provide advice, as well as people who themselves are making this transition to talk in an unvarnished way about the ups and downs.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland Forum, we have been listening to Marc Freedman, author of Encore, Finding Work That Matters in the Second Half of Life. Thank you, Mr. Freedman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.